Today's video is sponsored by Steinhardt's Guide to the Eldritch Hunt. Will you survive the nightmare? Steinhardt's Guide to the Eldritch Hunt fuses Soulsborne inspiration with Lovecraftian horror to create a monstrous 5e supplement unleashed on your table. Fight against absolutely demented foes, twisted abominations, and fallen friends. Empower yourself as a hunter with blasphemous magic. Steal the powers of eldritch beings, and unleash your bestial instincts. Beware losing your humanity in the savagery of the hunt. Madness is omnipresent, and with over 100 effects, it will shatter your psyche if you're not careful. To fight this insanity, embody any of the new race options, from eldritch angels to living dolls. Arm yourself with trick weapons and firearms such as the meat hook shot, to pull yourself to your foes and blast their heads off. Unleash the power of osteomancy, the bestial brutality of transformations, or wield eldritch powers never experienced before, and put an end to the scourge that plagues Luyarna. One surefire way to craft a bloody gothic adventure with your friends. Join the hunt today. Selfish player ends 20-year-old friendship over my bedtime. I played a druid in my first and last campaign with two longtime friends. Cleric, who was one of my best friends since college, and the DM, whom I was friends with for several years and was Cleric's best friend. The rest of the party was a paladin and rogue and a bard. All of us are in our 30s. Our campaign was supposed to be just for fun, according to our DM and Cleric. Our sessions started once every 2 weeks at 8 p.m. Cleric had to get his kids to bed, so he said he couldn't start any earlier than 8, and the party obliged. The end of the session was not specified, but generally went to 11 or midnight. Me being in my late 30s, I'm not recovering from these late nights as easily as I did when I was younger. Even though it's bi-weekly, I like to get to bed early. And honestly, 2 hours of D&D is more than enough D&D for me in a session. Now, a little necessary backstory about myself. I've been a people pleaser my entire life, so of course I don't say anything about the late nights bothering me initially. I've got anxiety, anger, and resentment issues. See the Disney movies Tangled and Encanto, minus the happy endings or references as to why I'm like this. Anyway, my therapist says that I lack boundaries. After I learn what a boundary actually is, I decide to set one for myself. That is, I'm done playing D&D at 10 p.m. I'm pretty happy that I got such an easy boundary as my first time setting one. So a day before our session, I let everyone in our D&D chat know. Me. Hey, just a quick heads up. I'm going to a limit of 10 p.m. for myself for all future D&D sessions. Cleric. Okay, why's that? Me. I'm not getting enough sleep and I feel like shit the next day and then spend the rest of the weekend playing catch-up. No one in the group has a problem with this, except Cleric. He keeps mentioning that he doesn't think 2 hours is enough time to do anything. Finally, he says, I'm finding it difficult to sympathize as I try to accommodate everyone to be here at 8, even though I'm scrambling with putting kids to bed. And I'm not able to catch up on sleep because I'm routinely woken up at 6 a.m. and then chasing kids around all day. Translation, you don't have any problems, try being a parent. I asked him what his deal was. Cleric, because you just said this is what I'm doing. Boom, end of discussion. You didn't discuss it with the group at all. You just did it. Me, it sounds like you're suggesting that unless the group decides that my reason for leaving is valid, that I'm being inconsiderate. This devolves into an argument, which Bard quickly diffuses and suggests we talk about it over voice chat after the next session. The voice chat happens and Cleric is still pissed that I didn't consult the group about me leaving. Me, I want to go to bed or just want to stop playing. You guys can do whatever you want. Cleric, you're ending the game early before the group is done playing. See, after I decided on 10 p.m. for myself, Paladin and Rogue thought it was a good idea and decided 2 hours was enough D&D for them as well. Cleric now sees me as some kind of ringleader who turned Paladin and Rogue against the rest of the group. The argument continues with Cleric pushing me. Cleric, why this particular boundary? Me, because it's my bedtime. I get to choose when that is. Cleric, yeah, but why now? Why are you so fixated on this particular boundary? Why do you feel you need it so badly? At this point, I'm speaking as calmly as I can, while internally I'm freaking out so much my hands are shaking. I explained that in the past I've always just gone with the flow and done what everyone else wanted, as opposed to just checking with myself to see what I wanted to do. Just be a follower. As long as the group is happy, it's all good. I'm now trying to be more authentic and transparent in my relationships, and that means, as just one example, if I don't want to do something, I state that I don't intend to do it. I try to reassure Cleric that this isn't about you. It's about me changing past unhealthy behavior. Both DM and Bard just try to appease Cleric and not rock the boat. Cleric isn't backing down on this, and the longer it goes, the more angry he becomes, and I'm getting pissed now too. At one point he says, "What about me? Why don't I get my needs met?" The chat ends with nothing being solved. Couple days pass without me talking to Cleric at all, which I'm fine with. Then I send a message to reach out, which goes, "Me, hey, just checking in. Wondering if you want to come over face to face and chat and kind of clear the air on this." Cleric, "Yeah, I'd like that. I've also written some stuff out. Just processing my thoughts and feelings. Do you think it would help if I sent it? Just so you can see where my head is at?" Me, sure, if you want me to take a look at it, I'll read it. Couple of hours later, he sends me a 2-page text document of the most batshit insane stuff I've ever read. He starts with a title, "The Facts So Far," then itemizes every talking point we previously had, completed with quoted conversations and dates to mark exactly what took place and when. He then writes a blurb about his thoughts and feelings about each thing I said or did. All of his conclusions were warped and twisted. Like, remember when I tried to explain to Cleric my past unhealthy behavior? This was twisted into, Druid's comments imply to me that the scales are uneven, and all the times that I've given in this relationship somehow aren't enough. I also interpreted this to mean that all that I give in this relationship is not even worth 1 hour of time, and that hurts me the most. It starts really getting crazy when he shares his thoughts on relationships. He nutshells them as energy in and energy out. See, Cleric keeps track of the amount of energy he puts into every relationship versus the amount of energy he gets in return. If he feels he's giving more than he's receiving, he pulls back from the relationship until the other person makes up what they owe. He seems to put relationships on a hierarchy. Parents at the top and single childless people at the bottom. Because he's a parent, in his mind he's already giving as much as he can. And since his responsibilities are so taxing or unavoidable, every non-parent friend should accommodate him simply because they're able to. He then accuses me of never truly accepting his decision to become a parent, ending the letter with, "Maybe it was inevitable with my choice to have a family. I wish nothing was changing, but I have to accept the fact that as others change the way they act and the energy they devote, I need to understand and align with the effort others are putting into the relationship." My jaw is through the floor at this point. I honestly have no idea what to say. The ego, the martyrdom, the sheer entitlement. Him, pulling back from a relationship to get the other person to prove they care about him, strikes me as emotionally manipulative and childish. I don't really respond other than thanking Cleric for being honest, and that we'll talk about it more at our meeting. Somehow I convince myself that he'll be reasonable. Yeah, I know. My own stupidity impresses me sometimes. The day arrives and I'm panicking. I have a habit of throwing myself into reverse whenever people are upset with me. Sorry, yep, I was totally in the wrong. I was having a bad day. I don't know why I even thought that, etc. Only to beat myself up later for not standing up for myself. I remind myself that this is all about when I'm allowed to go to bed or stop playing D&D, and there's no way that I can see another person has the right to dictate or demand compromise of someone else's autonomy. So I make a statement that is so concrete that I can't backpedal from it, or I'll look like a complete moron. Which goes something like this. Cleric, this conversation I think is a long time coming. Me, okay, first before we start, I need you to understand I did nothing wrong. I have nothing to apologize for. I have nothing to be forgiven for. He didn't like that. In retrospect, I think he went into this meeting completely sure that I would apologize and just fall in line like I had in the past. Instead, I pointed to the letter he sent me and referred to it as a friendship audit and accused him of treating me like an employee going through a performance review. I tell him the letter describes a transactional relationship. He disagrees and says that's how relationships are. It's give and take, and that in a friendship the two people owe each other. I have no idea what that last part means, but just a tip for anyone reading this, don't enter into any relationships where scorekeeping is a thing. I told him I was still pissed that he belittled me in our text chat by putting my reasons in quotes and comparing them to being a parent. He sees no problem with his actions, doesn't apologize, and pretty much says that he doesn't understand why I'm making a big deal about it, because I have so much more free time than he does. He then complains about his needs and wants again. What about what I want? What about my needs? And I just gotta say, this is all coming from a man whose parents paid his way through college, has a high 5 or low 6-figure salary in his mid-30s, owns a home in the suburbs that he paid off before the age of 40, and I know this because he bragged about it on social media, and has a wife and 2 kids. Basically the American dream, and he's crying about 1 hour of my time. Things continue to devolve. The best part was when I tried to explain to Cleric that he did get his needs met. Me, Cleric, you keep saying no one is accommodating you, but the group already did. You told us that you can't play any earlier than 8 p.m. because of your kids. We all agreed. That's us accommodating you. That's us meeting your needs, not the other way around. Cleric. No, because first I had to get Mrs. Cleric to agree to our sessions. Then I'm trying to get my kids to go to sleep, which is difficult and hard on me sometimes. And if they wake up during our sessions, Mrs. Cleric has to handle them by herself. That's us giving to you guys. So now I'm indebted to his wife too. I forget what happened to cause this, but the conversation takes a weird turn when he starts to talk about all of his responsibilities at home. Stress from kids and Mrs. Cleric. Then he says, I haven't really thought about the transition from college student to family man. Just for context, our college graduation was over a decade ago, and that's when it hit me. D&D was never about fun for him. It was all about escaping. He has everything he wants out of life, and he's still unhappy and has no idea why. I see a man who had an idea of what marriage and family life would be like, but the reality isn't what he expected or wanted. He's in the middle of a midlife crisis and expects the D&D party to be his emotional and mental life preserver. The argument also brought up a lot of issues I had with Cleric in the past that I'd ignored or buried. I won't go into specifics, but back in college, I would complain and talk shit about him behind his back constantly. I would get so angry and frustrated with him. I stopped because I told myself, a good friend accepts the bad parts of their friends, not just the parts they like. Now, I can't really think of any good points about Cleric. In college, it didn't occur to me that I just never liked him in the first place. But here I am 20 years later and my eyes are wide open. Cleric has always been like this, from when we first met. Entitled, narcissistic, self-pitying. He seems to purposefully surround himself with people who have submissive personalities, to feel in charge of the friend group. At the end of our argument, Cleric tells me that he doesn't understand my need to have this boundary, but that he will accept it. However, he does so with the most bitter and resentful look I've ever seen him give me. To me, he looked like an angry little kid who wasn't getting his way. And I could see this bullshit resolve at the edges of his expression. He saw himself as being gracious and selfless in that moment, a good friend, which honestly sickened me. After that, I played a few more sessions, but it was empty. I couldn't get over that look and the fact that he clearly didn't respect me. So I left. I told the DM, remember Cleric's best friend, about why I was leaving. DM was my friend too. I found out that Cleric had already talked to him beforehand. DM said that he understood the gist of our issues, without asking me my side of the story. Then tells me that relationships are about compromise, and that it's not about one side winning and one side losing. Both sides win and both sides lose. The entire exchange came off as a condescending dad talk. Looking back, I don't lament the end of these friendships. I'm focusing on bettering myself, exploring my interests, and enriching my life. It's funny how many stories that I've read about friendships ending over D&D. It makes me think that it might be the truest test of a healthy friendship. I still like the game. Paladin is taking a stab at being a DM, and is planning a smaller campaign with just me and Rogue. I'm really looking forward to it. Friendships are hard. As we get older, they get harder to maintain, and sometimes you're maintaining something that isn't even a friendship. If people can't play around a certain schedule, that should be the end of it. Respecting other people's desires shouldn't be this difficult. Tell us about D&D revealing your friends' true colors in the comments section below. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, All Things D&D. Stay tuned for more amazing Dungeons & Dragons content.